In this video, we're going to go through the difference between renting your own home and owning your own home. Hey, what's up guys? Dan Trevidi here. I hope you're all well. So as we enter the first weekend of the second lockdown, if you're anything like me, you're now getting back into what you were doing in the first lockdown. And for me, it's more YouTube videos. So I'm going to be trying to bring you two every week. To kick things off with my first video in the second lockdown, I want to really touch on this subject about renting your own home versus buying it. And there are so many YouTube videos and so many property individuals on YouTube, on Facebook, even now on TikTok, talking about why you shouldn't put your money into property and you should be putting it into startup businesses and Amazon and eBay and Forex trading and stocks and all these other bits and pieces. And then when you look at the property world, even some of the high profile property gurus, people who claim to be multimillionaires, have multi-million pound property portfolios, hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of cash flow. When you start to dig a little bit deeper, you'll find that they either have very large mortgages or they don't even own their own home. They rent. And personally, I just don't get it. Let's just break it down a little bit. Some of the reasons why people give you it's a good idea not to own your own home. So straight away, the first one is going to be the cash that you have to put in to buy your house, to renovate it, to own your home, whether that be with a mortgage or fully outright. If you've got a mortgage on it, it's obviously less cash tied up. So I'll give you an example. If you buy a house for 500,000 and you put a 20% deposit down, you're putting in 100,000 plus stamp duty, plus fees, plus legal costs. And you've got a mortgage, a hefty mortgage of around £400,000. Now don't get me wrong, that is a lot of cash to tie up. And it's even more if you decide not to have a mortgage and you tie up all that cash. And the argument a lot of the gurus say, or a lot of the people who take this strategy to not own your own home or even own it with a large mortgage, is they don't want to tie up large amounts of capital, which I actually do agree with if you're at the start of property investing. But if you're claiming to be a multi-millionaire with a multi-million pound portfolio and hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of cash flow, for me, it actually doesn't make sense that you wouldn't own your own home outright. And then we look at some of the guys who don't even own the house that they live in with a mortgage, they rent. And again, the argument is about not tying up huge amounts of capital to buy a property and that they can do more with that capital, which in turn pays their rent from the cash flow of the assets they buy, which actually sounds quite logical. But the reality is when you break it down between what you earn as an individual before you pay tax or what your company earns before you take out salaries and dividends, you're talking about using money that you've paid tax on to pay rent, which is going to another investor or another landlord. It just doesn't add up. So let's get into some of the reasons why this doesn't make sense. First of all, I don't claim to know everything about property. I'm definitely not the most successful property investor. I'm definitely not the most wealthy, but I've definitely developed a strategy that works for me and a lifestyle that in turn means that my income doesn't have to be very, very high because my outgoings aren't that massive, because I've managed to get myself into a position where I've reduced my outgoings. And one of those biggest outgoings that I've managed to get rid of is my monthly mortgage payment. And one of the main reasons I decided to do this is because I realized at a really early stage in property investing that you can earn 10, 15, 30, 50, £100,000 in rental income every single month. But after you pay your costs and your mortgage payments and then your tax, it does start to eat away at that income that you've worked so hard for. And then I worked it out that if I'm paying 40% tax plus large national insurances, or I'm paying corporation tax and the tax on my dividends, or 40% tax on the salary that I'm taking out, the money that I'm earning to increase my income to pay things like large mortgages, or in the gurus' cases, large rents, you're using money that you've earned, that you've worked hard for, but you've paid like 50% tax on whatever it may be, whichever way you deduct that cash out, you're paying large amounts of tax to pay a mortgage payment or to pay a rental payment. And I just don't get it. I can't understand why, if you're a property investor, you work so hard to buy properties that are below market value so you can recycle the cash out, add value, go again, and produce passive income or income from that asset. Why would you then effectively pour that money that you've earned down the toilet by a large mortgage payment or by a rental payment? It just doesn't add up. And the reason why it doesn't add up is because the reality is, if these people were as successful as they claim to be, if they had the portfolio that they claim to have and the wealth that they argue so rigorously that they have too, they wouldn't actually be doing it. Because if you look at some of the very wealthy people, and I'm not saying all of them do this, and there is an argument that to say some very wealthy people and billionaires still don't own their own home. However, if you take the vast majority, how many billionaires or very wealthy and extremely successful and popular people do you know that don't own their own home? Literally own it outright. And the answer is not many, because if you've got a successful strategy that is proven to work time and time again about buying and selling, or buying and building and selling, or buying and renting, or buying and refurbishing, renting, whatever it may be, if it's proven and it's successful and it delivers, that strategy will enable you to continue to invest and buy and do whatever you want to do with the income and the funds that it produces through rental income, sales, or refinances. So the argument that the capital that you tie up in your own home isn't worth doing because you can make use of that money elsewhere, I think is completely flawed. And it's actually really false, because if you're a true entrepreneurial, successful property investor, you'll have the funds that you need to do what you want to do. And when you start to make good money and you start to have to pay large taxes, the last thing you want to be doing is increasing your outgoings from a personal point of view. So I've seen a video where a rental income for a mansion is like $3,000 a month in rent. Now, to earn $3,000 a month, you've got to earn like 5,500 quid before you pay taxes. Now, to earn 5,000 or 5,500 quid or 6,000, whatever it may be, if you're a really good property investor, that's like 3 or 4 student HMOs. And if you're doing things like single lets or smaller properties, that could be up to 10 properties. Or if you're doing one large development, then holding on to it, that could be 2 to 3 years of your time before that income is materialized. So again, the argument is completely flawed. There is no reason why you should not be aspiring to own your own home. And if anyone asks me, how do they get started in property, and you're brand new to property, this is actually the easiest way for you to propel yourself onto the property platform. How many other strategies can you borrow money from banks to buy properties at the rate that you currently can get and loan to value? How many industries out there have government-backed schemes where things like you can put into a £4,000 in saving a year and the government will gift you 25% interest as long as you use those funds to buy property in things like the Help to Buy ISA? The answer is they don't exist for anything else, because property is the soundest investment. There's more incentives and processes to help people to get onto the property ladder, and you can make great income through rental income, and you can also make great profits by selling. And if you own that property in your own name and you sell that property, the profits that you make are completely tax-free. So if you take my place where I am now, I have a huge amount of capital tied up in this place, and I've created probably double the equity that it cost me to do it. Now, that argument that I could sell this and take that profit tax-free and use it to invest and buy more is probably true. But the reality is I'm buying exactly what I need to be buying, and I'm buying more property than I ever thought we would do in this year because of the pandemic, because the deals are out there and they're strong enough. And I'm not turning properties away because I don't have cash. There's always access to cash through my portfolio and through my companies. So I don't need to raise a large mortgage and have a very large outgoing that I'm using tax money to pay for. And I don't need to sell to materialize cash to go and buy more properties, because I'm buying exactly how many I want to be buying. And I could buy more if there were more great deals. So the argument is completely flawed. The tax incentives and the tax advantages for people owning their own home outweigh anything that anyone can suggest otherwise. The only thing that I would suggest you do in the very early stages is to keep your mortgage comfortable but quite highly geared, and to keep it refinancing your own home up so you can pull more funds out to help you buy properties if you don't have the cash reserves in those early days. It's exactly what I did, and it enabled me to then become mortgage free in my mid-30s because I did it that way. And I don't have large outgoings, and I definitely don't have a large rental or mortgage payment that I'm using my own tax money to pay for. And the reason why the gurus try and spin off that this is a really good strategy to rent your house is because they probably don't have the cash reserves or the portfolio or the success that they've been spatting on YouTube videos and Facebook and TikTok. So that kind of just leads me on to my last point, which is be really wary on who you listen to, because people can say all the right things, but what is actually behind the camera? And if they don't own their own home, for me, it's a question mark if they're spatting that they've done X, Y, and Z. It's not an issue if you're starting or you're on your way through to building your property portfolio. It's a great tool to enable you to buy more properties. But when you don't need to, you shouldn't. That's it from me. Stay safe. Hope you found the content rich, and I'll catch you all on the next video.